all about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my real top niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day
with your host as always on Sunday nights, Chris J. It is right now a little short, a little after 8 Eastern Time, 5 Pacific, and we will be talking about flight MH17. Was shot down by somebody, supposedly by the Russian-backed separatists in Ukraine, and there's been a lot of deception about Ukraine, and that's why I made the show about the Ukraine deception, how our government, our mainstream media has lied about what's going on in Ukraine. The real situation, not talking about what the Kiev government really is, what it's the political backing it has, and what it's really based out of. And the Kiev government is made out of a right-wing coalition there, a far right-wing coalition of they have like two parties, the right sector and the Svoboda party, I think it's something like that. And the parties are neo-Nazi parties in Ukraine. They are far-right fascist parties, and this is literal neo-Nazi control in Ukraine. And the government's not talking about it because they don't want to be talking. They don't want to talk about how they're right now funding these neo-Nazis in Ukraine who are, committing genocide against the Russians or the ethnic Russians in Ukraine. And right now you see that's what also these people who support Russia in East Ukraine. They're now practically at a civil war with the United States Kiev government. They're trying to break away from that Nazi government, pretty much. It is. And Crimea was annexed by Russia because that's where the biggest concentration of ethnic Russians was. 65% of Crimea is ethnic Russian. Almost all of Ukraine has historical ties to Russia, but especially Crimea. For hundreds of years it's been connected to Russia. And, what happened recently with MH17, where they were trying to blame it on these ethnic Russian separatists who have been trying to break away, and want to by the majority. And Crimea, 95% wanted to join Russia and lead the Ukrainian Nazi government. Now Crimea is officially part of Russia, as that happened in March, the official annexation of Crimea to Russia. And then, so you have these, in East Ukraine, you have these groups that are also, you have also these groups that are similar to the Crimean protesters who were for the Russian annexation of Crimea instead of being controlled by the practically military junta that Ukraine has put on Ukraine. The Ukrainian government has put on all of Ukraine at the control. Now, big parts of it now belong to the East Ukrainians. And, it's so far as a genocide and, discrimination against the Russians that these United States-backed Kiev government, support, that they support even the banning of Russian as a language. Like, you should not be spoken, period. And that, I believe that's that's right there, hate. As you can define it right there, that's hate. Banning someone for speaking their native language. When they've always had ties to Russia, and then just recently Ukraine annexed those parts of Crimea from Russia. That's more like what happened. I mean, all of Ukraine for 80 years before was under the Soviet Union, or that long, but for a long time Ukraine was part of the Western Bloc, and they had connections going back to the beginning of the Soviet Union. But I'm at the Eastern Bloc, it was part of from 1956 on, and the Warsaw Pact. Ukraine was part of that, and they had ties going back to the Russian Tsars. Only a little part of Ukraine is actually Ukraine. The rest of it was given to by Russia. And that's one of the major deceptions, is that Russia is annexing land that is purely Ukrainian. That's not true. It's mostly Russian land that they're taking back, and for good reason, because the government has taken charge in Kiev, and they're showing a lot of restraint by not invading and taking them out themselves, like they would when, like they did in Georgia, did a full-scale invasion. Now, that was just to throw the actual Georgian government, but they did release the lands that were pro-Russian at the time. See, there's a lot of benefit to being part of Russia, having non-Rothschild controlled country. It's prosperous. That means there's a currency's not being screwed with. They're going to soon have a gold-backed ruble. Inflation's way lower than these Western-backed East European countries, and they're in the EU, but backed by D.C., the New World Order that backs the Kiev government. And so there's a reason why a lot of new countries, or these regions, Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Crimea, and all those various, the Republic of Donetsk and Ukraine want to join Ukraine is because of or they want to join Russia is because of all the economic benefits. Their pensions went up in Crimea after that. They slashed their pensions from the Yankovych government, I think, is the Euromaidan government they called it. They called it the Euromaidan movement, and it was really a neo-Nazi movement in Ukraine backed by the West. And now Ukraine is under this predicament that now it's at the point of civil war, and they're going to try to blame this MH17 flight, okay, that crashed. 298 died, or I think some numbers like the 296, somewhere up there, were killed when they supposedly SAM missiles fired off by the Russian rebels hit the plane and then killed them. However, let's look at it this way: the Ukrainian government is trying to claim the Soviet missiles that they had received under the Soviet times. Those missiles, somehow the Russian rebels got a hold of them, and the Russian rebels would just be senseless violence, and they wouldn't do it. They don't. That hasn't been their style. The ones that have been committing massacres since the start of the Ukraine civil war, in Donbass and in other places, the ones that are doing that in Donbass and all East Ukraine are the Kiev government that had been doing the senseless killing. And this looks like a way more their style that they would do. And number two is the fact that it's just not. It's more feasible that actually the Kiev government does, and they had no evidence to really go one way or another besides what I've presented. And with the lack of evidence right now, but it's right now with that lack of evidence, it actually makes more sense to blame Kiev as they have a motive. They could get NATO intervention against the Russian rebels. That's the last thing that the rebels want, is NATO to come in and squash the revolution there in East Ukraine and then force them to be part of Ukraine. They know that they can't blame it, considering they don't have the mainstream media machine behind them. They couldn't blame it on Ukraine. And they wouldn't do that. That's not I don't think they would commit a false flag to that level. Anyway, it'd be very unfeasible for them to pull it off. There might be some motive. I don't think so. They're trying to gain a PR, public relations with the people. That Russian rebel alliance of Ukraine has done it in a very professional manner, not violence, more like in respect of the native, the locals there in Crimea and East Ukraine. And they're not trying to commit senseless acts of violence. And here's another thing is that they have the debris field that said went to 10 miles, where they found bodies and going out to 10 miles apart. But even if that plane disintegrated, there would be stuff, I think, further than that, even though the plane was 5-6 miles up. However, you think that wouldn't. You think that the winds would probably carry it further, and it's like when a Challenger blew up. I know it was at a higher altitude. There was stuff all over the place, across different states. When it burned up in the atmosphere, coming into the atmosphere, this Ukrainian plane was hit by it was hit by a SAM missile, supposedly. So it was disintegrated. I don't think the debris would be as intact as it is. This looks like just a crash. It looks like, by the debris field, it looks like more like it might have took a crash or, burnt up and then crashed. I don't think, it seemed like more like a small explosive went on the plane, blew out an engine and lost control, or maybe blew up both engines. It caused some damage for it to burn up, and the plane came to a crash there in Ukraine. And also another thing is, why was you flying over the no-fly zone? I know some flights have been able to fly over the no-fly zone in Ukraine, but I think that it was definitely a dumb move to do that anyways for Malaysian Airlines, but it is suspicious that it was going over Ukraine. I don't think that's the suspicious part, more as that it's most likely that somebody from the Ukrainian military, probably Ukrainians or the CIA or Mossad, I believe, one of those groups, probably were the ones who did something to MH17. The Patriot missile can go as far as those Buck missiles, the ones that the Soviets gave to Ukraine. They have a ceiling of, about as high as the Patriot missile, the 80,000 feet ceiling. But, again, the Bucks also belong to the Ukrainians. I mean, I think it could be a few different scenarios. And, again, it's only been a couple days. But there's some of the footage, just a lot of evidence doesn't look to point to the fact that it was actually shot down by the rebels. I think that they actually might have been doing also to get back at Malaysia, because Malaysia's been trying to join this BRICS bank. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa made bank. They put their currencies together into this bank, and they're making the new bank that's going to counter the IMF and the current financial system. And because Malaysia wanted to join BRICS, and there might have been a motive for them to be striking Malaysian Airlines, and also their courts have put Bush, Obama, convicted them of war crimes, Bush and Obama, and they want to bring the Israeli war criminals to be convicted of their war crimes, which I think is definitely would definitely be a good thing to bring the Israeli war criminals. As you see, they've been massacring kids in Gaza and Palestine, and especially recently, there has been deaths from the supposed Hamas rockets, but there's been many deaths from the Israeli bombing of Gaza and Palestine. Now they're doing a full-out ground operation there. And I think that definitely the time that might have been some motives for them to be striking at that Malaysian Airlines flight. I believe this is the third Malaysian Airlines flight that's been, somehow suspiciously crash, or they did something wrong, the media, in covering it. 370 disappeared suspiciously without a trace. They could read a newspaper from a satellite, but this flight just disappears. I've heard on one of the very first days of them, 370, after it disappeared in early March, I think that's when it was early March. There was this, there was this Asian dude that was at one of the press hearings, and he was saying, well, what about the plane landed at Diego Garcia Air Force Base, and then they kind of shut that up. They probably did, for all we know. I know this 370 MH17, I heard also the San Francisco one, the one that crashed on the runway in San Francisco, was also a also Malaysian Airlines, and that definitely brings some questions up. And notice, it wasn't just that; it was the media covering it, where they put the anti-Asian remarks that try to make it as names of the pilots on board, and they put like "holy fook," something wrong, stuff derogatory like how Asians speak on, and they said that it just slipped by, which I really doubted. That was to strike back at somebody. That was Asian, I would assume. And they have MH17. MH17 also was flying very similar past and was on the same day as Putin's plane. Now, a lot of reports are saying that might have been an attempted assassination on Putin, which also makes a lot of sense. There's something weird going on with these Malaysian Airlines flights. 370 going to Diego Garcia, possibly. That's the thing. 370 might have been. They might later say they found them. A terrorist have captured them a long time ago, and the people on 370 were captured by terrorists or whatever. They were trying to say that it was the Persians on the plane. Saying that the Iranians had the fake passports on the plane, and it scared everybody, and everybody was convinced that Iran had something to do with the plane going down, or with the fate of the plane. And 370, I think later they might say that some terrorists did it, and then we'll be able to justify some war with them. Iran, they'll try to point fingers at them again. 370 MH17, and San Francisco, the San Francisco crash, stuff went wrong there. They also had definitely negligence on the field as there was, I believe, a fire truck ran over one of the people that was injured of the San Francisco flight. It was definitely a scandal that how it was treated at the National Airport. Coming back from Korea, I believe. I think that was a Malaysian Airlines flight. It crashed, and all that stuff happened. But all the three are connected. MH17, 370, it's definitely raised some eyebrows. I think MH17 has a big role in possibly what goes down the next couple of years around the world, because of the possibility that they could use that as something to start a war or whatever, a false flag. They say they got who is with Ukraine, and they're going to say they're going to blame it on the Ukrainian government, as the Ukrainian government being responsible. They'll say, they're blaming it on the Ukrainian rebels. Honestly, I think that the whole point here just seems like a ploy to put Russia and the United States to war. And like I said, you're going to blame the Ukrainian rebels. The ones that are working for the Russians, the Russian separatists or whatever you call them. They blamed it so far already, and they're going to keep blaming it until something's done. And because it's shot from a rebel territory, that's what they're trying to say. The same was shot out of a rebel territory, and they say rebels guarding and stopping international inspection. But Putin's actually working. He has his own investigation going on. I think that's what the Russian rebels are doing. They're doing their own investigation. Again, there's a lot more motive from Kiev than the Russian rebels. The Russian rebels just going to get international response to crush them. Kiev get international response to go against the Russian rebels. Russia might help, but it's definitely not in their cards. Would not be smart with, and would not be their style to do something like this. Those Ukrainian rebels. So I really don't see the Ukrainian rebels having done it. I think it's Kiev World leaders already said it's Kiev. There's major sources that are saying that it was possibly an assassination attempt against Putin, that somewhere past his plane, his presidential plane, which is not a Malaysian Airlines flight, of course. He has his own special plane, and they mistaken it for that plane. The Ukrainian government, the Kiev junta, and then they tried to shoot down Putin's plane. I think there's just a lot more evidence at this point that MH17 was there's something we're just not being told about. MH17, it's a deception. It's not, I'm not one of those people who says that everything's a conspiracy either. There's some stuff I don't believe was conspiracy. There's like, people want to say, well, what school shooting if you think, if you're questioning Sandy Hook, what else? You think Columbine was fake? No, I think Columbine was actually 100% real. There's some major events, that I could say that I just don't believe everything the mainstream media tells me, but I don't believe everything is a lie. I just believe a lot of it's a lie, and we have to sort out what's truth, and that's, some stuff that just doesn't work their agenda, and they'll tell the truth about it. But if there's something that gets spin for their agenda, for the elite, the New World Order agenda, the mainstream media is going to lie about it. I think there were some people saying the San Francisco flight was was done by them. No, I think it was very real. At least I think it definitely, there might be the small possibility that it was fake, but I think that flight was real. I think now 370, no, that's something fishy went on there. I don't really think they lost the plane, and the same thing with MH17 because of what that whole Malaysian political activities are doing, with putting these major war criminals that are from the West, Obama, Bush, Netanyahu, and the other Israeli leaders, put them on war crimes trial, and also joining BRICS. Might be the reason why they're doing these things against Malaysia, and the crashing one of their major things concerns the tourist industry. Probably Malaysia has most of the tourist industry, I can only imagine. So that striking at their state airlines is a major blow to their economy. There's some events I see that are true, but this one MH17 I don't think so. I think a lot of people agree with me that there was not much incentive for the Russian rebels to do it. Russia doesn't look like they did it, honestly, because they're investigating and they seem to be very cooperative against the accusations. They're definitely playing it cool if they did do it, but they didn't do it. The United States has a lot of motive to do it. Again, part of it was because of a pipeline in Ukraine. I think there's major pipelines that go from Russia through Ukraine into Europe. So that's part of the reason. It's like Syria. There's a major natural gas pipeline that goes from, I think, Israel or Russia or something like that, that goes through Syria. And now, with that falling apart, again, they're going to start a war to save whatever part of it. It comes down to money, a lot of the stuff. Again, the elite, they're all about money and profit, and when something doesn't go for them, they're going to start creating shit that makes it where they can continue to make tons of money off of something. It's mostly that, the elite is the elite because they're rich. They're not elite in other regards. It's just their money, and then they got their money with power, in the world controlled by them, or this Western world. That's this. A lot of the world's controlled by them, and they have the Rothschild banking systems. Are in most countries, or they're influenced. The Rothschild influences in most countries, and that's the elite. 13 families that have a lot of power. The 7 now are they have control in a lot of countries, and that's how what's going to come down to is money. What's all the stuff that's going on is not really about other stuff. There's a lot of money that can make also a third world war if it comes down to this Ukraine rebel versus Ukraine proxy turns into USA versus Russia, there's a lot of money that some defensive subcontractors are going to make off of that. So be wary about that. I don't believe it because that's going to be the next big war. I think that the United States will invade Iran and Syria first, and then maybe later, after Russia standing back, there'll be a direct confrontation between the two. There wasn't a direct confrontation last century, even though we were certain that the USSR and the United States would eventually go to war, but it didn't happen. But I think that's what's going to happen between the U.S. and Russia or the Eurasian Union this century. Russia has, pretty much made themselves bigger by adding Belarus and Kazakhstan into the Eurasian Union. It is definitely a big move for Russia. And, they're regaining dominance that they lost after 1991. Now Russia has regained that dominance, and the prosperity that they had. They did have prosperity in the Soviet Union that was lost after that. After that, most life expectancy dropped. That's how significant it was. People starved by the millions throughout the Soviet Union. Women were whoring themselves out. That was the Russian mail-order bride started at that time. Now it's almost like a fad nowadays. With so many people that partake in that in the United States. So that they did that with the Russian mail-order brides. Many people just in fear getting their money away. Yeah, I think some were rich people that made money under the black market and now afraid that their money could get froze up. They got their money out, get their money froze up again. I think some were that, and then send their good-looking granddaughter to somewhere foreign, like the United States, get their money out of Russia, or they could just all fall apart at that time. It was a rough time, definitely. And it was not a good thing to collapse the Soviet Union for the people there. Definitely not at the time. And also in the 80s before, stuff wasn't as bad as it got in the 90s. I think there was a collapse that was to, weaken Russia, try to replace it with oligarch rule like they saw in the 90s with the Yeltsin era. I think it was a facilitated collapse by the elite. They infiltrated with Gorbachev, I think, to the top, and they collapsed it, giving it to Yeltsin. I think Gorbachev was the first of a elite infiltration into the government of the Soviet Union. I think there might have been attempts before, but that was the first real attempt. Was Gorbachev. After they had the weaker presidents of Andropov quickly die, Andropov and Chernenko die, and before that, Brezhnev, all three of them died real quickly. And then they had their perfect opportunity to throw in Gorbachev. In 1985, he took power in March 1985, which is now almost 30 years ago. And then after that, they started with the reform, and then eventually the collapse of the Soviet Union. Then Yeltsin came along, and Gorbachev pretty much let the Soviet Union collapse. He tried to make it seem like I think he tried to make it seem like he tried to do what it took, but he was just trying to make the Soviet Union collapse. He was a traitor, and Yeltsin followed in suit. He was a traitor, and he was working with the New World Order, United States, the D.C., London, Tel Aviv, Vatican City, New World Order. And after that, then we took control again. We took control. They had control. I think more during the Stalin era, and then they regained control during the Yeltsin era, and then they lost it to Putin. And they didn't realize that Putin will kick out the Rothschilds and arrest warrants after the Rothschilds and the Soros, after George Soros, and also I believe he's also making the gold-backed ruble. So now they're going to be completely free of Rothschild influence, it looks like, and it'll be definitely a secure spot. They also released, real files that proved that 9/11, satellite images and stuff like. This is real evidence that 9/11 was an inside job Mossad, Tel Aviv, Mossad from Tel Aviv, the Saudi Arabians, the United States government were all involved in bringing down the Twin Towers and doing the other events. There's just all the coincidences. It had to be controlled demolition. Fall at the same speed of free fall of World Trade Center 7th bombs when supposed structural damage straight down as if a controlled demolition. Jet fuel can't burn steel. They couldn't find luggage, bodies, the wreckage. The Pentagon, the same thing. Flight 93 just practically vaporizing into the ground, completely disappearing. It's like the Pentagon flight. And they supposedly found the passports of the terrorists on the floor. I really doubt it. I don't know. It just doesn't seem feasible. And then they found out that those people that actually, the 19 hijackers that supposedly died on 9/11, really were actually, those 19 hijackers, actually some of them came out back in Saudi Arabia to be alive. So something definitely not right here. And, with that aside, it's another false flag. Well, this one might be more disastrous, and I stress the importance of this show, getting the word out right now about what's going on with MH17. This could get real serious real quickly. I believe that we're nearing a time of war, and you need to wake up. The elite is doing their plans, and the sheeple are pretty much just letting it happen of this world, and they're letting the elite commit these crimes. The elite's government in Israel is killing the Palestinians, and also now the Ukrainian government is killing these ethnic Russians. In this case, it's racial, imperialistic, Machiavellian type stuff. It's mostly with the racial stuff in Israel and Ukraine. Ukrainians versus Russians, the Israelis versus Palestinians. That is causing major problems. And then there's they wanted to put the Rothschild banks in Syria and Iran, and this is what it's all about right now. And I know it was almost a year ago when when Raytheon stocks, talk about how they're for money. Raytheon stocks, went off the charts and everything, and John McCain received a bunch of money from Raytheon because guess what? It was time to vote on a war, and what's that? In the drums of war beating, there comes all this optimism, defensive subcontractors, they're lobbying people. This is their opportunity to make more money. So I remember when that happened, and over the chemical weapons, that was earlier found out that was a false flag from the Saudis. And, so it's hard to tell what is, with a lot of these events, what's true, because, the media just distorts things. When you have 6 people that you on 15,000 media sources, it's kind of hard to decipher what's really going on in this planet. And, we have to look to alternative media, and then when you see the government saying that they want to ban alternative media, like Hillary Clinton was saying, you have to question why would they want that? Why are they scared of competition if theirs is so truthful? The truth always prevails, and not these lies, but it's because they're trying to mask the truth with a bunch of lies with their corporate media. When you really look at it, the kind of people that own the mainstream media are despicable. It's billionaires, it's defensive subcontractors, gigantic corporations, foreign nobility. It's disgusting who owns the corporation, or who owns the corporations of America's news that you are watching when you tune into the mainstream media. When you tune into Fox, CNN, MSNBC, those big 3, and then probably Al Jazeera. Now Bill Gates has control of Al Jazeera. People are like, well, that's just that's capitalism for you. The rich guy do what he wants. But it's fine. It's corporatism. These corporations are preventing free market. So even the capitalists should be against them. And capitalism, I don't believe, is perfect, but it's sure a hell of a lot better than corporate fascism. That's the fucking system that's got to exist. I know I've talked more about what I believe truly politically. I would say I'm a libertarian, left-wing person, kind of a George Orwell. He was a democratic socialist, George Orwell, who wrote 1984 and also wrote, Animal Farm about Stalin in 1984, about the Big Brother state of the future, the technocratic state of the future. And I've done a show about that. Hate to self-promote, but it's good to get the word out. And you can listen to that show. And also, I'm George Orwell, Noam Chomsky, even though I think that he's not, I don't know if I really agree with everything he says. There's some things that I meant are wrong. You won't talk about JFK or 9/11. One of the two major events right there, 9/11 made one of, actually it is the most important false flag in the American history. I don't know, the Gulf of Tonkin is also pretty important, or the Lusitania, but at 9/11, he won't talk about on top of that, JFK, who, that was his attempts to fight, the fight in Israel becoming nuclear by sending the monitors to the nuclear development facilities in Ukraine, and his stand by putting executive order against the Federal Reserve to allow the U.S. Treasury to print debt-free money was also another thing that the elite didn't like, so they had to take out Kennedy. Noam Chomsky won't talk about that, which I find a little bit alarming. He's trying to try to explain 9/11 away and JFK the same way, and he says, you just started the Vietnam War anyways, but JFK only was going to pull out the advisors that are already there. The not advisors that came actually earlier in JFK, I think, sent some, but then he brought them back quickly. He was on the way. He did some stuff, improving defense, but I think it was from really improve his defenses from the New World Order, and he's going to make our country great again. But the elite, who have controlled this country since 1913. And when they did the full scale buyout of the Federal, the United States with the Federal Reserve, people like J.P. Morgan and others, ever since then, December 23rd, 1913, they've had control of our country. And it was almost the start of the military-industrial complex. It was almost an early seed of it. And later, now the military-industrial complex controls this country. Federal Reserve kind of forced America into World War I. I think with the elite had control of the United States, they could do whatever. They had a little false flag, and then they sent America off to war. There's the military part, the industrial part. The United States, they had industrial power that they made even bigger. And then they combined them, and now you have a military-industrial complex. That was the start of the military-industrial complex around that time. And then it wasn't an official thing until Eisenhower warned of, Eisenhower warned of it. It was the first time we kind of coined the term for it. And now military-industrial complex is a reality. And we're in this corporate state, it's about to become a corporate military junta. The corporatism is the very definition of fascism. Mussolini said that fascism should be called corporatism, as it is the merger of corporate and state power. No better way to say that. That's the truth right there. And people like Leon Trotsky had predicted for years before we actually had this military dictatorship, this fascist military dictatorship I think is coming up. Martial law being declared and everything. He predicted that we'd fall under that military dictatorship in the future. And look, we're about to fall into it. We have a president who's wrote an executive order that any second by himself can declare martial law. There's no other thing there's no way to explain that off. That's what we've fallen into, tyranny. And Ukraine is now under that tyranny. They did a coup pretty much against the old Ukrainian government, took control, put this new Ukrainian government, the Euromaidan government, and now they have control of Ukraine, and now the Ukrainian rebels who want to split off, protesters are getting slaughtered. Now they have, people, protesters who want to break away from Russia, they have now made an armed force, militias. When your enemies aren't peaceful, you do peaceful demonstrations, and more you gotta rise up and punch the bull in the face, and that's what these people are doing. And now they're making it seem like terrorists. They say Russian militants, and then they say Ukrainian political activists. As well, Ukrainian militants, how it started against Russian activists, and then eventually the Russians became militants. The Russian-backed Ukrainian rebels became militant to fight the Ukrainian militants, and now we're in the, it's right now full-out civil war. I mean, thousands of people have died in Ukraine so far. It might not be the kind of numbers of Syria where we've had hundreds of thousands have died in just 3 years, but it's definitely in the middle of a war there, and I think Syria might be a bigger country. Ukraine's about the size of Spain only. It's kind of weird thinking about Spain. Spanish Civil War was where George Orwell fought and Ernest Hemingway fought for the Spanish Second Republic. The Spanish Civil War, they had these anti-fascists that were stood up against the fascist dictatorship of Franco, Francisco Franco, who had Francisco Franco sided with the Nazis in World War II, and the Soviet support, even though they were betrayed, Spanish Czech Republic, eventually they got betrayed, as it was a libertarian socialist force that was in the Spanish Civil War, in the Spanish Czech Republic. They were kind of supporters of a former Spanish government that overthrown. It was kind of like the Ukrainian deal, but the Ukrainian deal, they don't really support Yankovic as much, but it was kind of like that. Pretty similar. It's almost like the same thing over again. It's a deja vu effect, almost. That's what's going on with this Ukraine compared to the Spanish Civil War. And then eventually, the Civil War broke out in 1936. It lasted 3 years before Franco won, unfortunately. And that's why I fear is going to happen. I fear what could happen. I don't say it's going to happen. What I fear is, the Ukrainian government could win. And I fear it's going to happen if they use this, they use this for the effect of calling in NATO, and then yes, this could be a problem. It's kind of, Ronald Reagan said that they were on the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, or I think it was one of the brigades in there, and the Spanish Second Republic were on the wrong side of history. And then who was on the right side of history? And then I'm pretty sure that means that he believes Franco was on the right side of history. I don't think they'd both be wrong. One's got to be right. And the Spanish Second Republic wasn't right, so they're saying Franco was. So, all those people say that Reagan was this hero of liberty. He wasn't really a hero of liberty. He was the one that started he started the wiretapping of phones, warrantless wiretapping of phones in the 80s. I was started under his administration. And they also did the collapse of the Soviet Union. That was the way they did it was wrong. Maybe if they had found another way to do it, it wouldn't be so wrong. But the way they did it, by the sudden collapse and the IMF taking over and the elite taking over, was very wrong. And then led to all that turmoil. 93, the Parliament building gets blown up. There's all the constitutional crisis of 1993 of Russia. I mean, it was chaotic after the. It was chaotic after the Soviet Union collapsed there. And Ukraine was actually going to join the Eurasian Union. A few other countries, there's Armenia, they're going to join. But Ukraine, that's what kind of the protest, there was the Russia-backed Yankovic. Wasn't as backed as these rebels, I don't think, but the Russian-backed Yankovic was going to sign with the Eurasian Union, but it didn't happen. And the Eurasian Union, which is not really like the next Soviet Union, but it's the next Russian dominant force. It's almost like a renewal it's almost like the best stuff of the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union combined. And yeah. So this Eurasian Union, Ukrainian government, Ukrainian rebels definitely did not want to be a part of it. And there were neo-Nazis, and I think anything close to Russia they don't like. And they put up a picture of a Nazi collaborator on on one of the major buildings in Ukraine. Some people said it was Hitler, but it was actually a Nazi collaborator that worked against Ukrainians for the Nazis. And they put these people national heroes, and they want them to be national heroes. This Kiev junta government, this is neo-Nazism that's going on in Latvia and Estonia. These countries that really hate the Soviet Union are turning back to Nazism, it seemed like, and I forget what Nazism must have done to the world. It's very, very messed up what's going on in Ukraine, and definitely with this whole Eurasian Union, it's not really an overstepping thing. Ukraine wasn't really certain to be in it. I don't think it was maybe an observer state almost to that effect that Ukraine was going to be in it, and then these protesters do a fascist coup, and now they're committing genocide and stuff like that. It took against something that was not really that bad, and they took it as an excuse to do a coup and then start a fascist government that's now killing Russians. They killed pregnant women at the one massacre. They set the building on fire. I think gassed it, or I know they set it on fire. It's one of the major buildings with pregnant women, I think, in it and stuff like that. It's very wrong. It was like the Waco massacre almost, when they killed all those pregnant women, children in that building, in that house in Waco, the anti-government church, and set it ablaze. That was very wrong. Philly bombing them, and we have our own incidents, because we practically trained them. The United States, if the United States is the evil master and they're the student, the Ukrainian government, it's the government. The people, I think if they knew what was going on, would not support it. But the problem is that they're asleep, so they're letting the government commit these crimes, these war crimes, and they're not speaking out about it, and that's a problem. The indifference is just as bad as almost doing it yourself. Doing indifference to these horrible actions, these war crimes that our government's committing. Indifference to the Ukrainian junta's crimes, to the Israeli Netanyahu-controlled country's crimes. I mean, it's very wrong, all the stuff that's going on. I think that also possibly Mossad, just like they had in 9/11, might have had some involvement in this MH17 going down. Mossad seems to be the most sneakiest and one of the best intelligence forces in the world. Maybe is the best. They're like the most battle-trained soldiers, most professional soldiers, the Israeli soldiers. They say also like Canada, I don't really believe that they would be pretty rusty. Maybe that was a joke. The United States is pretty professional still to this day, I'd say, but, they're professional in doing war crimes. The military is what they train them to do. The United States Army and the Israeli Army, they have the United States as part of the military wing of the New World Order, and Israel's the headquarters, and they have the IDF has just been, they've killed hundreds of people already, I think, of this conflict, and Hamas has killed 0 so far in this 2014, summer 2014 conflict. Remember, they had stuff like this in 2012 that happened, and then before then, in 2009, 2008, 09, they had thousands were killed, and about 13 Israelis killed. Another one, there was like 9 killed, 4 were friendly fire, stuff like that. The Israelis don't take these big losses, and I think it proves that it is not that it's not a war; it's a genocide. There's a difference between war and genocide. There's a defenseless force, not one that can defend itself, that's being killed off in Palestine. The same thing was in Ukraine, but they now have militias to fight for themselves. Palestine doesn't have a standing army, navy, air force, any of that stuff. And they're practically walled in by Israel. They live behind these walls in Gaza, and then Egypt blocked one border off, ever since Sisi, which looked like it was going to bring legitimate change, this new revolution, they had against Mubarak, Morsi came in, tyrant, Sharia law, the economy falling, he was going to push Sharia law, he was going to be like a Saudi dictator, and then he was overthrown, and then Sisi comes in, and instead he's practically working with Israel now. They say he has connections family-wise and stuff to Israel, and I think that's very much possible in the way he's been treating, only allowing certain people to come over. I don't even think he's letting them see doctors, these injured Palestinians. That's the only people he's letting over. The only time they're letting him is at this very serious crisis time. You wouldn't let him at other times. And Sisi's acting very much like Mubarak or something would do. He has almost the same style and swagger that Mubarak had, unfortunately. Sisi might be a little bit better than Morsi, in my opinion, but he's definitely no hero, Sisi, and I think that definitely the Nasser movements need to get put together. Nasser was a socialist leader back in was a socialist leader back in the 60s, who was practically the one who mentored Gaddafi in the 60s. And Nasser was a pretty good leader, and then followed by Sadat, really the same, and then followed Mubarak, and then these recent dictators. But Nasser, there was a Nasser's party in this last election, but guess what? They had like 3% of the vote because it was very quickly. The election came without notice very quickly, I think, is the problem. And then like 7% voted only. And there was like 97% vote out for. There was a 97% voter turnout, which I think might have been still somewhat legitimate. I mean, it looked like it was going with somewhat the will of the people there. It was a Sisi election. However, the timing of it. I think, the Crimean reform 97%, but I think it was way more turnout. I bet, and the Sisi thing might be, that might. I think the Egyptian people are just blind to what's going on right now, unfortunately. And that revolution was just another tainted revolution, as it's fallen, another tyrant had fallen to. And it might not as be bad as the last tyrant, but it's definitely not the significant change that they want with the revolution. And Egypt has told us the style of a revolution. How do you do a revolution? You have to bring all those people to the capital, intimidate them, pretty much bring millions and millions, tens of millions of people into the capital. You got to get a lot of the country behind it. You can't have these little small protests that won't do anything. We got to show the majority of the country opposes the government. If we want to ever oppose the elite's government here and bring a government that is for the people and that truly represents not the rich, but the super rich of this country, but actually represents the average Joe, the average person in this country. But we have a government that has put the average person also down to poverty, and we've had a middle class collapse in this country since the elite has taken over in 1930. The slow end of the American dream. The American dream's been dissolved. It's practically fictional at this point. As money has inflated 20 times or something like that since the Federal Reserve has been created. The American dream is practically gone at this point. I don't know if it's really much of a thing anymore, unfortunately. And this is your host, Chris J. As always, on a Sunday night. It is 9 p.m., a little after 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It is a little after 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Now, all of a sudden, this is just a few months after 370, and then there was that one incident. I think that was Malaysian Airlines with that San Francisco flight from, I think it was a 777 plane or something like that crashed at, that crashed at San Francisco. It was a Boeing 777 from Malaysian Airlines, I think, was the deal or something like that. It's all, it's all something to their agenda, striking back in Malaysia, I believe, as it's because of their, involvement with the BRICS and because of also how they're putting the United States war criminals to actually face justice in their Malaysian courts. And I think that I think that's what's really going behind this Malaysian Airlines conspiracy. It's definitely a conspiracy at this point. I just don't, I need to. So what if the fourth thing goes as long as Malaysian Airlines? Then you know for sure. I don't know. Two is a coincidence. Three, starting to become incalculable, the odds of this. And four would be, it's not impossible. I just don't know. It seems all fishy to me about this MH17. And, there's no motive for the rebels to do it. It seems like just do senseless violence. There's motive for the Kiev government. And you have world leaders already blaming them. But besides, Barack Obama was blaming the Russian rebels, or trying to separate from the Ukrainian junta. But no, the other world leaders are blaming Ukraine. It came out saying or they believe it was an assassination attempt against Putin, which would be coming from the West. That's what Western supported assassination attempt against Putin. So that's what the other two stories, 2 or 3 stories, point that America, Kiev government did it, not the Russian rebels. It seems it's just a time of war now. We reached, and who knows? As soon as this kind of talk might be censored, talk about what really went on with this Ukrainian flight, and then this just a couple days after I got this. Now I have this show idea, and then I'm glad to be able to do this show. Definitely a lot of information to be put out there. Footage, there's all kinds of stuff. Doesn't seem to match up. The SAM missile, you think the plane would disintegrate, not be still intact somewhat. And then crash. You think would just completely disintegrate in midair. That's what you would think. It would be disintegrated up there at 30,000 feet. Hit by, they say, a Buck missile that the Ukrainian rebels stole from the Ukrainian government got from the Soviet Union. Ukrainian rebels stole. It seems more feasible the Kiev government just used one of those Buck missiles. And I don't think it was even SAM. I'm really downing even that part. There's too many things that are wrong with the story. The official story is completely bogus. They're putting in written papers, victims of Putin and stuff like that. They also, it seems just like the blame Russia button. It's the only button the mainstream media has right now. They're blaming Russia for this tragedy when probably the Kiev government did it. In fact, the location of the show in Kiev, Ukraine, on the Facebook event page for this show. And honestly, I don't have too many more points for this show. I would really like to hear some of the people's opinions for the show. 347-205-9576. So we'll just say this show, Stable Radio, this Revolution Radio, this right here on a Sunday night. Talk about what's going on right now in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government is, I think Yankovich was somewhat corrupt. People are pointing to symbolism on their dollar or whatever. I think some people are almost defending Ukrainian neo-Nazis, but it's not that simple. Yankovich might have been corrupt, but I think honestly it's pale in comparison to, nothing in comparison to what is, to what the Kiev government is doing currently in Ukraine. It's nothing compared to that. It really isn't. It's just absolutely disgusting what the Kiev government is doing. It's like the Israeli-Gaza conflict. It's almost as bad as that. You have said now that some people have gotten arms in Russia, and there's no Russian help. That's only in Crimea. Russians have not invaded. They agreed not to invade East Ukraine and the rest of Ukraine. They say that some troops crossed, but they have definitely not done a full-scale invasion. They have the right to cross. I don't think they have done it. They have a right to cross the West Ukraine, I think, to take down this government. If they can do it, because here's the thing: it's not like the United States will stay around and take away resources. They don't work, for the elite who just want money. The Russians have known to just get out of stuff, like what they did with Georgia. And I don't think I think the East Ukraine, East Ukrainians definitely want to leave Ukraine, and the Russians crossing over. I think it was just Ukrainian junta trying to start something with Russia. You know, the Ukrainian junta would be crushed, their military, by the Russian forces if they did a full-scale attack against the Kiev junta, I believe. But, you know, man, they're not really thinking logically into this and thinking, you know, what would really happen to the Kiev junta. Or, you know, their whole thing would fall apart. These people have been doing Nazi salutes and, you know, they're not, you know, they're supporters of Nazism. You know, they have racist chants and everything just like the Nazis would. You know, and they have these thugs that this giant army. They talk about nuking one of them. I think Tymoshenko was starting to nuke. They want Russia to be nuked. You know, which is just absolutely disgusting and stuff. And no, we have 40 minutes left of the show, and until studio hour. And if anybody does want to call in, please do 347-205-9576. That is 347-205-9576. His Stable Radio, Revolution Radio. Please do call in, voice your opinion for the show. I think I've gotten what I've had to say about this topic. You know, there's not too much evidence out there. I must admit that. You know, there's only been a couple days, but I think the evidence would point to the Kiev junta did it. You know, they say because they're guarding international inspectors, these Russian rebels are, you know, guarding from inspectors, which they should probably just collaborate with them. But you know, they just want to do their own investigation, make sure it's not, you know, falsified by some foreign outside source. You know, the East Ukrainian self-defense forces are, you know, defending themselves. You know, it's self-defense from the Ukrainian junta. You know, they have the right to secede. And I believe when you have this criminal government and the West Ukrainians won't overthrow them, I think that even the West Ukrainians, the majority are against the junta, but they won't stand up to them. The East Ukrainians have stand up to them. The Crimeans have stand up to them. These people have more historical connections to Russia. They're actual part of Ukraine that's originally Ukrainian and actually towards the center. And definitely, you know, definitely this is an interesting thing that this MH17, you know, that it happened now. Well, no, this is just one of many false flags that's happened. And these false flags, they do some fake event and then blame on some outside force hoping to start a war, and this is what it seems like is going on. Now, I think, again, they're going to do some false flag, may set a bomb off, you know, start martial law or whatever, blame it on the, you know, Iran, Syria, maybe some domestic terrorist force, they'll call it. You know, this immigration crisis that's also going on, you know, you wonder if they're going to try to, you know, this could be possibly a setup. I think it's, you know, they're the reason why they support illegal immigration, this government. It's cheap labor, and they're also potential soldiers, you know, to keep the average population low in this country, and then they could be used as potential soldiers. That's why the government has been supporting this immigration. You know, it actually works for the benefit of these corporations for illegal immigration to happen, and to the military industrial complex altogether, and they get to use them as soldiers. Now, I say that there's this big war that's coming up, the Third World War Memorial. It's going to be a lot of immigrants' names on there. There'll be a lot of Ramirez's and a lot of Hispanic names. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's not going to be like past wars. It's going to be a lot of immigrants who are promised an easy path to citizenship, but instead, and you know, a high pay that they give back to their family. But instead, they're going to be sent to their deaths on the battlefield. A lot of them, unfortunately, or injured, or you know, or how many? Almost all of them are coming back to like mentally injured, and others are physically injured. You know, and the mental injuries that come along with just all stuff that goes on, the ugly things of war. You know, and they want to do more war with Iran and Syria, and that would be a drastic, you know, a Hezbollah alliance, you know, Lebanon jumping in, it would be versus the United States and Israel. It would be a big, giant war. It would be a Third World War, definitely. Russia doesn't even have to get involved for this to become ugly. Russia, I think the Russia, Chinese, some of the bigger other ones, Indians, won't get involved until a future conflict that I think will come later, like World War I and World War II. We have it's 8 days from today until we have the 100th anniversary of World War I beginning, when Austro-Hungarians invaded Serbia. After the Serbians, they were put into that plot. They were accused of killing Ferdinand via Gavrilo Princip and the secret, something like that. There was a secret organization in Ukraine. I forgot what the exact name. I was thinking of the name, but some organization in Serbia. One that was that organization in Serbia that killed the Ferdinand and Gavrilo Princip was actually one that pulled the trigger. They have like photos of it happening, and that happened over 100 years ago. That was June 28th. Then later became the crisis of July, and then that diplomatic crisis, them trying to stop a war. So, the Germans had some demands. They wanted to be paid back, and then they didn't make the demands, or the Austro-Hungarians, I think, and then the Austro-Hungarians invaded Serbia, and then later everybody jumped into the war. And it became like a domino effect as everybody jumped in, invading war on each other in World War I. It was 100 years ago. Also, I must say, since today is July 20th, feliz día de independencia a Colombia, a todas las personas que son de Colombia que están escuchando a esto programa de radio, and say Happy Independence Day to all the Colombians who are listening to this radio program tonight. It's Happy Independence Day, and our Colombian should note that. And definitely have a good day. We're celebrating Colombian Independence Day. We're just today on July 20th. And we still have 35 minutes left of the show. And I don't know how I'm going to fill up the 35 minutes, without any callers. Talked a lot on the show. Let's hope that July 28th this time doesn't become, another World War I. This is not like, it's not like the 100th anniversary of World War I be next start another pair of world wars, with this Ukrainian crisis. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Or another world war or whatever. Let's look for the truth and try to look for peace instead of, jumping on the warmongers, the elites, plan. Don't jump on the Biden conquer strategies. Don't jump on their warmongering. Look for peace. Peace doesn't profit them, so they have to have a war. The bigger the war, the more profit. The more bombs dropped, they get more profit. The more uglier the war, the more ugly, by more weaponry used, and it's going to usually means more ugly. There's going to be more money made for the elite. I also must say that 40 years after World War I died, now he would have been 60 years old, the late president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, Bolivarian, the revolution, the commander, the comandante, was born 60 years ago, 40 years after the start of World War I, on July 28th. When that comes up, definitely person, definitely, I would say. I did a 2-part show. It was 3 hours, and I think it was 2 hours and a 3-hour show. And that's back in the archives. Definitely go listen to that if you get the time to. It's a good show. That was towards the beginning of my time here at Stable Radio, and it's in the archive, so definitely check those two shows. It's a 2-part show. It's in the archive. It's on the Blog Talk Radio website, Stable Radio. We are right now in definitely, this is a serious time. I mean, the war could break out. There's a lot of stuff that could happen. Global currency reset. This next 100 years really. This century that we're in is the make or break century for humanity. If we don't do the right things, we're going to end up under a new world order. But we could end that. We could end this whole plot for a new world order and replace it by humanity, and actually, for sovereignty countries and, this peace, we could have a whole different road. Well, wasn't there like Ron Paul said there was a better option to this? Or so, maybe he was talking about, another option for the, the leader had many tactics to, try to avoid falling apart. I think there's actually this big revolt that's happening around the world. People are starting to wake up to the crimes of the New World Order so late right now, and near the end of their, near the end of their plans, for the New World Order. It's nearing to where they could secure, one world control. There's a few countries that they haven't marked off the bankers, that they haven't marked off their list for banking, for the Rothschild banking system. There's only a few countries that are not under the Rothschild banking country's control. And once those fall into the Rothschild banking control, then all the countries of the world will be under the same currency. That's very alarming. That all the countries in the world under the same currency system, the same Rothschild international banking system, this cancerous, infectious disease that's Rothschild banking, stealing away the sovereignty of your country secretly it's ruled by secrecy. Like the book by Jim Marrs says, that's what the best way to describe it. How the New World Order, the elites behind it. I'm not trying to promote Jim Marrs, but I'm trying to say that it's the best way to say what's really it is. These elites don't make it obvious that they're in control. They're very quiet about they're in control. I mean, when's the last time you've seen the Rothschilds on television? And they say that there's people even higher up than them, like the Medici bankers and stuff like that. I don't know, but I really believe it's actually the Rothschild bankers. That there's more evidence to that they are the current ones in control. The current elite of the world are them, and they're trying to put their elite system. Fascism is for the elite. There's an elitism at the top of fascism. Oh, these elite people, these super rich, Democrats, the Republicans also, they like to say the Democrats are acting intellectually elite or whatever. They have this, smug about them almost about, but that they're. But it's really, it's on both sides. They're both fascist, Republicans and Democrats. They try to make it seem like the Democrats are know-it-alls or whatever, when it's really they're all a bunch of crap, the Republicans and Democrats. And people need to realize that they're the same party. There's really no apparent difference between them besides these little, these little, useless debates about stuff that doesn't really matter. But when it comes to stuff that really matters, they are definitely on the same side they're on the same side. They're both working for the elite. You have to look to a third party, a militia, a revolution for to end this New World Order control of this country. The New World Order has been in control since 1913 in the United States of America. We need to end it. Or America as we know will cease to exist. We have like NATO troops, UN troops. U.S. and UN have become almost one, and people need to realize that. But, we'll be on our streets, occupying our streets, and we're going to be martial law. How about we occupy the elite and cause their whole system of future military junta like Ukraine is to fall apart? Why can't we do that? Ukraine is now under a military junta practically, and the world is silent. As the Ukrainian junta commits crimes against the ethnic Russians. It's like how the world's been silent about Israel. There's Israeli people watching people get bombed in Gaza, and they're watching it like it's a movie. It's absolutely sickening shit that's going on. Pardon my French there, but it's wrong what's going on in Israel, and people are turning a blind eye to Ukraine and Thailand. There's this big protest, and I haven't really gotten to the root of what's going on in Thailand, but I know they've fallen under military junta, which that's an alarming thing to hear. I hear that it happens all the time in Thailand, apparently. But they have had huge protests and repression of the protesters in Thailand. I think it looks like they don't give it very much media attention. It's probably I haven't seen if they spin it or not. They gave it a little bit of media attention. Might be. It's probably not. Probably the protesters are not too pro-West or whatever, and that probably means that they're not going to get any media time. Instead, the probably the government turned, and I'm pretty sure that's how it works with Thailand. They're one of the pro-Western Southeast Asian countries, one of the few ones and they're going to support the Thailand government. So it's not like Malaysia. Malaysia is moving towards the Russian, the BRICS. I think there's this thing that's going to rise up against the New World Order. This movement that is right now going on around the world. A few countries that are stay away from the Rothschild banking system, like the less than 10 countries that were able to do it, are now going to, have, like Russia, is going to be able to be part of this BRICS and start to sway the countries the other way. Germany apparently now is no longer a United States, or is not as strong as the United States ally. I think that might be kind of not really true. I think that Germany's still pretty much a United States ally. It's kind of a game that Germany's playing. But Thailand, it comes down to United States government versus not United States government in Thailand. And I don't know. I'll probably have to the protesters. I bet there's been some serious problems going on there. To tell you that. In Southeast Asia's divide. There's always been a place of conflict between the pro-West and not the pro-West countries. We are now, I believe, about a little less than 30 minutes left of this show. And again, anybody who wants to call in, speak your opinion about this Ukrainian deception that the mainstream media has been pulling off, please call in to Stable Radio at 347-205-9576, 347-205-9576, and spread the word about this show. Research into what's going on. There's going to be more info coming out as time goes along, but it seems like something fishy definitely happened here. It's not the official story. I see the possible Putin assassination attempt, or the Kiev government, shooting it for a motive as almost like as a false flag, or the shooting for the Malaysian. The three stories I could think of that fit better than the official story. That's more like I think the striking back on Malaysia, or the Putin, the strike on that Malaysian Airlines. That Malaysian Airlines is going to suffer heavily with these two big incidents recently. These two big incidents coming within a couple months of each other. Definitely not going to hurt, or definitely is going to hurt. I mean, their economy, the big time. It's a serious matter for the Malaysian economy. The Malaysian economy is fragile and is based on tourism, from Europe and stuff like that Amsterdam to Malaysia flight. And now people are not going to be as willing to go on the Amsterdam to Malaysia flight when they fear that the Malaysian flight is going to disappear or something like that. I think someone even made a joke like that or said the statement like that while this MH17 thing was going on. I think it was Thursday, Wednesday now. It was a few days ago. What was the exact date it actually happened? I know that the news about this has been all biased by the mainstream media. It's rubbish. Garbage for the to look at those British people ever talking about their news media sources being lying about this and trying to blame it on Russia solely and stuff like that. May have just been I've been reading too much of their stuff. That's why I'm saying rubbish. But it's garbage what they're saying. Definitely not true. What the British media really went overboard. United States media, same thing. When they start a war with Russia or something like that, or build this new Cold War. Stuff like this happened in the Cold War a few times, and this is Cold War II. There was some people like, well, that was that Gary Powers dude that was up, but that was a military plane. There was that plane that was actually struck, out in the Pacific, West Pacific, that was shot down. I think they said the Soviet Union, United States also, United States had an Iranian plane before, and they had to pay back a lot of the victims of that plane. They don't even talk about that. That was 1988 that happened. It was towards the end of the Iraq-Iranian war, which the United States had supported Qasem Saddam Hussein of the Iraqis, who commanded the Iraqi military as he was the president of Iraq, the dictator of Iraq from, I think, 1979 to 2003, and going to, they say also there's supposedly a John Berkshire or something like that. Congress, he's a Democrat, Congressman McDonald, which I don't know if they're really makes a difference. They won't, really claim political lines. But apparently, said that I don't think he was exactly right, but even more, his conspiracy he was talking about. He said that super capitalism and communism, it's more like fascism and authoritarian communism, super communism, authoritarian communism has been used by the elite. That's what I would say. Personal take on that. They say because of that, that's why the plane was struck. Who knows? I don't know if I would say so. We were playing like that in the Cold War, though, that happened. Similar stuff like this happened quite a bit. Like a few other cases made of planes being struck in the Cold War. Now this is Cold War II. Cold War II has been really going on since like 2012. It seems like ever since the summer 2012 relationship between Putin and Obama and the United States have deteriorated. I think Putin became more independent of the United States, and it really goes back to 2008. There was that missile defense shield and the Georgia-Russia war, and then you go back to a couple of things with Russia. Russia's also been in diplomatic relationships, now a strong alliance with North Korea. The United States won't even talk to them. There's a lot of stuff that they disagree with. The Russians and the United States. The Russians are now, party elite. The United States looks like it is. Definitely is. The Russians don't look like they're party elite. That's what it looks like, and it is, I would say. And that's what this is really going down to. It's almost like this is what it's going on right now, the proxy war, this little Ukrainian civil war that's going on. It's like the proxy war in Spain that led up to World War II. Now we have this little proxy war in Ukraine. Everything's almost happening just like the first time, just as it did the first time. It's just deja vu, it seems like. Just 75 years later, all of this Ukrainian conflict is happening. Actually, 78 years since the start of the Spanish Civil War, and it ended, I think, 1939, so 75 years. And again, Orwell and Hemingway fought in that war. Both the Spanish Second Republic, two famous authors. Orwell, who was definitely an anti-fascist, and Hemingway, who stood against the United States imperialism and the United States DC's DC having control, supporting these fascist dictatorships in South America. I mean, Hemingway still was Castro, and I think they still have they still kind of admire Hemingway down there in Cuba. One of America's great writers. Hemingway and Orwell, who was a British writer. That's why I think he called it. It's supposed to be like a failed version of Stalinism, it's supposed to be, Stalinism is a failed version of socialism. That's what his English socialism is supposed to be in, that ideology that he has, what's that, Ingsoc Party or whatever. The Ingsoc Party in 1984 was George Orwell. So it comes back because he was British, and the United States has always been, doing stuff that's questionable around the world. One of the most questionable things is their South American diplomatic policy. Their diplomatic policy of supporting tyrants, that like Pinochet, who, they throw people in a van, they disappear. That anybody who's a dissident who was a dissident to Pinochet. And, now that they finally had broken free, they've broken their chains, and then Hugo Chavez and Pink Tide in South America, things definitely look up for South America. Then the United States government is freaking out about what's going on in South America when it's because they have lost control and they're not able to do the horrendous stuff and the genocide and the murder and, the United States government has been able to do in the past and doing the New World Order and the elite's crimes for them. They're their henchmen. They're their minions. They're New World Order henchmen, ratchetmen, that's what you could call the U.S. military. They're a tool. And talk about Ratchet, I guess they're a tool. And then you got, Ratchet as the tool, not the hood term, but they're a tool for the New World Order. This, they're henchmen, the elite, or the for the elite DC, Ratchetmen of working in DC, and DC is actually an independent city from the rest of the United States. There's the United States, and then there's DC that's its own city-state. Same thing with London, no part of the rest of England or the United Kingdom. And then there's the Vatican City that hasn't been since Mussolini's time a part of Italy. These like city-states secretly control the world, practically, or a big part of the world is more like the best way to put it, because there's a couple of countries that are still fighting out there. And America needs to put up a fight. The American people need to put up a fight, but they won't. Under the sphere, Big Brother coming down on them, they'll be audited or something. I don't know. What is keeping Americans afraid of rebelling? The rest of the world will rebel. There's something that's keeping Americans afraid. Americans are afraid to rebel against the tyranny of the United States government. They won't do it. So this corporate fascist government that you see in D.C., why won't the United States people rebel? I don't know why. Well, we have 15 minutes left, and I've been doing a lot of talking this show. Definitely, if anybody who wants to call in, please do to the show. Get some more in before the show comes to an end. We already went through an hour and 45 minutes of broadcasting here. So far, a lot of good information, and hoping somebody else can put in their info, their input on this crisis that is going on in Ukraine. But it's more than a crisis. That's what they're calling it on the mainstream media. But it's more like, in reality, it's a civil war. I mean, that's the only way a civil war, proxy war. There's no other way to say it. No real fancier term. It's a war. And people won't realize it's a war. But it is nothing less than a civil war at this point. And when people realize it's a civil war, they'll be good. Realize that the Kiev junta has started a civil war and not granted, has not granted for them to be able to separate East Ukraine, has not secession from the rest of Ukraine. West Ukraine has been committing these horrible crimes, and East Ukraine should be able to, run away from these genocidal actions that are going on. It isn't really genocide. I mean, a lot of these people that the Kiev government is killing are civilians, and there needs to be more international reaction about it. Israel, same thing. Israel, who with the help of Egypt, has blocked in these Gazan people so they get struck by these Israeli smart bombs. And you have people like Bill Maher and these other big celebrities that are coming in support of Kiev, or not Kiev. They probably would, but these I would say, well, they actually came and support Tel Aviv. I mean, it's like what we're talking about with Fukushima. When you talk about Fukushima, how nobody reacts to that one, this radiation leaking, and nobody's always keeping the Japanese government accountable and stuff like that. I'm not getting a fix like when they were able to do with Chernobyl in the Soviet Union, but they can't do it with Japan. And with Japan's Fukushima, they can't put a dome or whatever, or get the engineers to construct some kind of fix. There's got to be some kind of fix to stop this radiation, so the whole ecosystem of the ocean doesn't die out. You really hope that so all these ecosystems don't die out in the Pacific Ocean, But no, it's just a vast variety. So many different ecosystems that are being killed off in the ocean, and by Fukushima, and the Japanese government stands idle. The world stands idle. Nobody will do anything. Most of the life of the Pacific will be dead. If we don't do something, and the radiation counts all over the world will be too high. The whole ecosystems will be gone You know, there's already a big part of the Pacific that's dying off of the Fukushima radiation. Let's make sure that some of these ecosystems survive, you know, and then then things start to change, you know, not have like not have some horrible crisis or let's not make it even worse. Let's not make this worse than it has to be. We'll just fix the problem like they were able to do with Chernobyl in 1986. You know, this was back in the past. You know, it's been 28 years later. You think they would be better at fixing this kind of stuff, but I don't know. I think that would be easier at this time. You know, they did that back in 1986. That pretty big, significant feat of engineering, you know, to encase Chernobyl. And, you know, now they need to encase Fukushima. The fix, or whatever the fix is. I don't know. It's, you know, Ukraine, you know, I just showed the other, you know, cases of people standing idle, to what's going on in Ukraine. Yes, definitely it's a genocide, it's a war. It's you know, it was a genocide, and they're still killing civilians off and aiming at civilians, it looks like, and striking churches and stuff like that. And it's a lot. There's a big portion of the Orthodox Christianity community that is now standing up. You know, they're mad, they're pissed off at what the Ukrainian military is doing to these, you know, Orthodox Christian sites throughout Ukraine. And that's, I guess that is definitely actually a good thing. There's a lot of Orthodox Christians on this planet, and I think most of the Christians should be pissed off, you know, by what they're doing. And just everybody should be pissed off by what is going on in Ukraine, by the Ukrainian military. And now, you know, finally, these Russian separatists have armed themselves and stood up to the bully. You know, I think they were able to get armed. You know, it's not like Israel where they're, you know, it's not like Israel where, you know, Palestinians, or the Palestinians have not been able to get armed too much. You know, it's very hard for them with all the restrictions on trade, you know, with Palestinians. But, you know, they're still able to get some imports from other places. I'm going to let this caller in the studio. We finally do have a caller, and after an hour and 50 minutes, I can finally bring somebody who has an input.
Yeah, I'm on the air, right? Okay. I came to your show because I wanted to find out what it is that you're talking about, because the headline says Revolution Radio presents the Ukraine deception. So I presumed that it was about politics. So I just called in to find out what your perspective was, and if you have anything that I agree or disagree with, then I can chime in. So I just got here. So I, in a nutshell, maybe you can tell me, and maybe some other people who haven't been listening for too long, what is the Ukraine deception in a nutshell?
Okay, the Ukrainian deception in a nutshell, and I was just talking about what it is in a nutshell. The best way to put it is these Ukrainian neo-Nazis, fascists, many different people from the right sector and the other party, the Civil Voida Party, have got together and pretty much staged this coup. They made it look like it was against the corrupt government, which may not have been against Yankovic, but then they replaced it with an even worse, you know, government. This is the Kiev government that's currently in charge. It's like a military junta. And what's wrong is that they're completely neglecting history, one of the things. You know, when it comes to the Nazis, you know, they're putting these Nazi collaborators, they're putting up on as national heroes. This is so wrong. I mean, you know,
I don't know what the deception is. Okay, there's a coup or something. I still don't know what the deception is. What is it that I presume you're talking about the media.
Mainstream media has lied.
Okay.
You know, they've been saying that the Russian militants, you know, it's kind of funny to even say they call Russian militants who, yes, they have arms and now are fighting, but before they even had arms and stuff like that, the majority of them, now a lot of them do, they call them militants, not activists. Then on the Ukrainian junta, they called them activists, even though they're the ones who have a standing army with tanks and missiles and everything, and actually really have the ones that were capable to do this MH17 shoot down.
What is it in the media that the media is saying that is lying? What is it that they're saying that's deceptive? In order to be deceptive, you have to either lie or twist the truth in some way. So what is it that the media is saying which is not true?
Let's say one of the main things they're saying that's not true, I believe, is that they came to this hasty conclusion on the Russian rebels shooting down the MH17. That's definitely, I really don't think there's a motive for the Russian rebels. It'd be self-destructive. Get international forces against them is what they'd be, risking by doing that.
I still don't know what the deception is. You're giving me a brief background of what's going on. I don't know. If I say to you, I'm going to institute a particular policy, and then you find out I didn't institute a particular policy, then I deceived you. I lied about something. So I'm just trying to find out, in a nutshell. The main thing is that
they're lying also about the revolution of Ukraine. The recent 2014 revolution was not really a revolution, but more of a coup. They're lying about that Russian. They're not talking. They're deceiving, making it seem like that it's Russian militants are terrorists and are trying to hurt civilians solely alone, when it's actually that they're defending themselves from the Ukrainian military that they won't talk about are committing genocide. They've done a few massacres, including the Odessa massacre. They did not put much media coverage here, where they killed 30-plus people by burning the building, including pregnant women.
Let's assume I know nothing about the Ukraine other than the fact that it's near Russia or was part of Russia. If I asked you, what is it that's going on in the media that's talking about this place and situation that I know nothing about, that the media is getting wrong or is lying about? Because I know very little about it other than it's there, and the reasons why the United States is involved, nobody's making clear. And so
the United States is involved because they are it's a very valuable piece of territory. That's why the United States is trying to turn it over to the EU and to the United States powers. It's mostly because they were going to join that Eurasian Union, is what I think it's about, which was going to be this customs union, a little economic kind of partnership between Russia and a couple other countries. Not the next Soviet Union, like some people might assume in the name, that Ukraine was going to be a part of. And then, I think that's what caused the United States to back this coup in Ukraine. Against, all of a sudden, the old Ukrainian government has been displaced, and now this new Kiev junta has been put into. And they've been lying about the true reasons of why this revolution went on. They're lying also about one of the major things about Ukraine. There's pipelines that the United States wants control of that go between Russia and Europe. The rest of Western Europe. They're serious kind of the same deal.
So what I'm getting from you is that the Ukraine is valuable for oil. The United States controlled some pipelines, and the revolution that went on in the Ukraine that displaced the government wasn't done by
the people. It
wasn't done by the people. It was done by the military as a coup.
Yes, the military. Ukrainian military turned against Yankovych, and then they helped prop up Right Sector and Svoboda Party, who are two far-right, neo-Nazi parties, practically, which they also lie. They try to make them seem as more moderate than they really are when they do fascist salute.
What kind of possessions in the Ukraine or near the Ukraine did the United States government have with regards to oil or energy or the pipelines?
In Ukraine, if you're asking, it's the pipelines. That's one of the major things, and it's also it's also the partnership between the giant. They don't want them to fall. They don't want Russia's economic dominion get bigger, the United States government, and so they did this coup against. Now that's targeting ethnic Russians because originally Ukraine was going to join that economic union, which would be...
So you're saying that the United States is behind the coup, the military coup of the Ukraine, because of the pipelines?
Pipelines, yes. There's several reasons, but yes, the United States was very much behind it.
I'm just going by what you said. You said that the Ukraine is valuable territory and the United States had control of the pipelines. I'd like to know, how did we have control of pipelines in Russian territory?
No, they didn't have control. They wanted control.
Oh, they wanted.
Okay. But now they do have control now, because now it's the United States territory. Except the parts that are into East Ukraine, and now this is where we're at this war.
Well, how is it United States territory?
Because the United States has their ally, a very close ally now. They're now closely working together.
Okay, let me suggest something. You're not speaking in complete sentences that actually express a complete, coherent message. All right, so I have to keep stopping you and trying to press for more specifics. So I'm just trying to find the nutshell description about why you think it's a Ukraine deception, and what I'm getting so far is that the United States was behind the military in the Ukraine that performed a coup and made it look like it was the citizens that was doing the uprising, when the citizens weren't responsible for the uprising, but it was the United States, and now the United States, because of this coup, now controls the pipelines.
Yep.
Am I getting that so far?
Yep, they have control of pipelines. The United States government now has control, does not have control. I would say they have, they'll have influence over what goes on in Ukraine significantly now, and they'll prevent Ukraine from being a piece of Russia's proposed economic dominion that they wanted with the Eurasian Union.
So they want to prevent the Ukraine from becoming part of Russia so that they could have influence over these pipelines. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because Ukraine was not going to become a part of Russia, but they were going to become a part of their economic dominion. It wasn't going to be like the Soviet Union per se, where they had total control of Ukraine back then, but it was going to be a European Union. That's what the Eurasian Union is. It's the counter to European Union.
A European Union? All right, you're going to have to... Never mind. All right, go ahead.
Well, what, do you not know what the European Union is, or...
Well, I don't see how Russia would be part of the European Union. Russia's its own.
No, they're trying to make their own.
Oh, okay. So they want to make... So they want to try to bring back the Soviet Union in a way, huh?
They want to bring back some of the dominance, yes, that they used to have over the region. They want to have more influence, than they have now, and they want to go back to some of the influence they used to have, especially over some of their closer allies are left over from the Soviet Union. Some of those countries nowadays are not so close with Russia anymore. Some are. Ukraine was kind of more pro-Russian, but now it's not, after the coup.
Okay. It was pro-Russian, but now the coup... Was the coup in order to keep the Ukraine from becoming part of the Soviet influence, or was the Ukraine trying to become part of the Soviet influence?
The Ukrainian government was willingly signing with signing deals to become, I think, more like sort of like an observer state with the Eurasian Union in 2013. However, that fell apart now because the Kiev junta has now taken charge, the new government that has resulted from the coup. It's not like Russia was forcing it down Ukraine's throat to become part of the Eurasian Union. It's more like they was bilateral support for it. It wasn't solely, Russia shoving it down their throats, like some might think. this coup has been shoved down the Ukrainian people's throats, and most of the people of Ukraine do not support the coup, especially in East Ukraine, where they have taken arms against the coup.
So before the coup, was the Ukraine pro-Russian or anti-Russian?
It was leaning pro-Russian. I'm not going to say like they weren't like a Russian territory where they were sided with everything Russia did, but they had a decently pro-Russian government. Now they have a strongly anti-Russian government. I mean, to the point where with hate they don't like the Russian
people. All right, now with this anti-Russian government, which the United States is behind, you're saying that this anti-Russian government would want to become part of this Eurasian unity, or it would not?
Definitely would not.
It wouldn't.
They want to join the European Union, actually, which Ukraine was part of neither. You know, they were going to join the Eurasian Union, which it hasn't become a thing yet. It's a proposed thing right now. They have never joined the European Union, but now they're going to join the European Union because of this new coup-resulted government, which is going to be disastrous for the Ukrainians because they're going to fall into a falling deck of cards with the European Union. You know, the whole economy of the European Union is collapsing. And also, you know, actually since the coup government, you know, Ukrainians have lost a lot of the pensions and a lot of the many benefits that the Yankovych government gave them. But now that's been cut ever since the Euromaidan government, which is the government that's resulted from the coup, has taken charge.
What makes you think the United States is behind the coup?
I would say, you know, just how they treated the whole situation. They were supporting it, you know, via media coverage. I believe it's because of I think it's just very evident, honestly, because it works perfectly in their favor. You know, this happening, and there's a lot of money that's going between the United States government now. I mean, it was like automatically, I think, right after the coup happened, the United States government gave over $1 billion to the coup government, the one that resulted off the coup. Well, which is rare, actually. I mean, the United States government gives only that kind of money to strong allies like Israel, Colombia. You know, I mean, this is billions of dollars, and this was immediately after. It was like the coup happened in March, or I believe it's actually late February, and then about a month after, not even, Kerry comes over. They give him $1 billion to Ukrainian government.
And do you think that the aid to the now present Ukraine government is in order for the United States to have some kind of control over these pipelines? Is that the motivation?
Definitely.
Okay.
Actually, I also think it's about, you know, they want to let some paramilitary groups, maybe even the United States military down the road, into Ukraine. You know, they said that they spotted paramilitary walking around, you know, local Ukrainians and different parts of East Ukraine. These people were not wearing Russian uniforms. It looked like they were, it's the current version of Blackwater. Blackwater is no longer called Blackwater. It's called Akademi, is the current version of Blackwater.
And why are you interested in this particular issue?
Why? Because this is definitely it's a humanitarian crisis.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Right now, the Kiev government is committing crimes against the ethnic Russian people. You know, that is akin to the kind of segregation we had here in America before the Civil Rights Act. You know, racism around the world. And this is people getting murdered. You know, like the Odessa massacre. You know, 30 people died in that building. It's just that one event alone. And most of the world is standing idle. That's what really gets to me, is that most of the world is standing idle to war crimes by the Ukrainian government.
Oh, okay.
Crimes against humanity.
All right. Because I know very little about what's going on. To me, it's over there, and I personally believe the United States should keep its nose out of everybody's business.
Yeah, I wish more people thought like that. Unfortunately, people think that America should be the world's police, which is definitely not a good idea.
No,
you know,
I
a
don't
lot
like
of people
that
think
idea.
that we should be policing around the world. You know, people believe that you know, that we should be trying to solve. It's really not solving a lot of these conflicts, but more like, you know, just getting involved. I really think the United States government needs to cut its giant defense budget. That's part of the problem. You know, that we spend more on defense than every other country in the world combined. Imagine if we spent some of that money on education and some of the stuff we lacked in this country. Maybe we'd be back to the great and mighty country we used to be in the past. But I think we're kind of fading because we've used it all on defense.
Well, yeah, I don't agree. I don't think that if we spent all the money because we've been spending money ever since the Great Society, and it hasn't solved a thing. So the more money that we spend, the more debt that the United States accrues, and the worse off we become. I just think the United States government should just keep its nose out of everything and let people do their thing, you know, and don't spend money. And then we'll go back to the kind of America we had back in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. But you know, there's many reasons. There's one major reason for why America's in such great debt is because there's a system involved. You know, very rich bankermen in the 19-teens. Made this thing called the Federal Reserve. You see it on your dollar, and people don't realize what it means. But the Federal Reserve is a private bank that charges the United States government. They charge them to print United States currency, and to pay it off, the United States government has taxed American citizens ever since. Before 1913, we did not have any income tax, and we still had a military and everything.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I really think that's why the true reason why we're in debt is because we've fallen into that perpetual debt system that's going to keep those people that are running the Fed.
That's what I'm saying. Because if you take the money that goes towards war or putting up bases in other people's territories, and if people say, well, if you redirect the funds towards social programs, America would be better. I thought that's what you were saying. Is that what you're saying?
I think we just need to spend some. Of course, we can't spend the kind of money that we've been spending recently, but you know, we need to get our priorities straight. We still, you know,
we're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. Congress is full of traitors and thieves, so they've been on an agenda for years to bring down America. So that's what's going to happen, and probably nothing's going to stop it. So that's my feeling on it.
I think just more people need to wake up to what's going on in this country. Unfortunately, not too many people want to know. Too many people are distracted by so many other things in this chaotic country now. I guess they don't want to know what's really causing a lot of the problems America has nowadays. They don't want to look at the corruption in Congress.
What's funny? The past few months, I've met people across different demographics who surprised me that they actually do know that the United States government is corrupt and that America is very much on a downhill slide. But again, even if people are awake, they don't know what to do. And if you tell them what to do, they don't do it. So that's why I'm saying America is doomed. Just too many sheeple.
Yep, that's the best way to put it. Too many sheeple. You know, people get too distracted. Also, they think that you know, the two-party thing they get really distracted by. They think that is a real system, but it's not. I mean, so when it comes to those two parties, they only differ on issues that don't really have much importance. You know, when it comes to stuff like taking away your rights, that they'll agree. Both of them will agree that we need to do this in the name of security, take away this right and this constitutional amendment, and make that void.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
when it comes to stuff that doesn't really matter, you know, and make these kind of like faked issues that, like gay marriage or whatever. And it's really just, I believe, just a media distraction. While there's way bigger issues in this country, and then they go to stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, do you have any solution?
I would say, of course there's some stuff that, ultimate goal, get rid of the Fed, impeach all of our government, really. We need to just start fresh. We just need a reboot, honestly. Our computers, it's like a computer, our government, that's gotten infected by a bunch of viruses and been infiltrated by all kinds of nasty spyware and stuff like that, in the technical terms. Yeah. And we just need to reboot. We need to put a new hard drive in there. And one that's works a lot differently.
Yeah, how would you suggest doing that?
For now, we need people to, we need to get the word out, But, and we need to assure people that it's very much possible to overthrow this government. And we should try it peacefully at first, but I'm not totally against the idea of militias to protect ourselves from violent government forces. But we need to tell people that during the American Revolution, 3% of the country was in the American Revolution. That's all it took to overthrow the British, or throw out the British out of this country.
Well, yeah, but how would you go about having this type of peaceful revolution?
We have to. There's many different things we do. Like Occupy Wall Street, that kind of thing. We have to disrupt the major corporations. Operations. These these major banks, Bank of America and stuff like that. We got to make, their operations difficult. Start to cause, don't help the machine run. We need to be the cog in the machine, or else the machine will continue to run. And that's what we can do. And then, if stuff starts to go violent or whatever, don't be the one to initiate the violence, but don't sit back while we get slaughtered. Have a militia for self-defense.
Okay, so how would that solve the problem by, let's say, having boycotts or strikes or against the corporations?
Well, since they are since they won't be able to lobby, if we start to disrupt that kind of stuff, that's one of the major things that Congress has become corrupt by, is lobbying. If we can start to disrupt these corporations and banks that really run our government, then that's really the root of a lot of this evil in this government, is that. And if we can strike at that root, then things might start to change. If they have no longer, they'll be able to listen to the new government can listen to the people and not have money whispering in their ear. So that's why the corporations, the people's voice is not going to be listened to when they have a corporation's voice. A couple rich people will give them $100,000,
I agree.
To vote for a war.
Well, I have how much energy, how many people do you think would be needed to do that? And how much energy and how much time do you think it would take in order to institute the organization of people, in order to get the boycotts throughout the country, and in order to have an effect on the government?
I would say it'd be probably a couple of years, probably. I mean, it all depends, honestly. I think I think if it goes like the Egyptian revolutions, where they got a gigantic amount of the population there, when they overthrew Mohammed Morsi, it could be very quick. It could be a year or less, and then we have change.
That was CIA funded, though. You don't have a dictatorship that's going to be overthrown because you have social media. So, and then it started, then it went from Tunisia, then there's Egypt, Syria, Libya, and, all the way down the line. So now we've got the Ukraine. It's all the whole thing is one big deception. I'm thinking of The reason why I believe that America is doomed is because a very simple solution has always been at hand, but people don't take advantage of it. And you're talking about boycotts and strikes, which I think in the short term